Welcome to All Things Moore County, Moore County's weekly radio show highlighting the many facets of the Sandhills. That includes real estate, lifestyle, community and neighborhoods. And now, from 4 Properties, here's your host, Bill Sahadi.
Good morning and welcome to the talk show, All Things Moore County. Dorothy, you're going to have to bear with my voice today.
Yeah, I hear. It's a little scratchy.
It's a little scratchy, but
hopefully your guest will do all the talking this
my
time.
guest does not have the same issue I do.
That's good.
And I can promise you he's plenty articulate.
Good.
And he's got a very interesting story to tell, one that is, for many reasons, near and dear to my heart. And as you hear him speak, you'll hear things that we have said on the show in the past with other guests. Mm-hmm. And one of the things we've always said is in southern Moore County, there's a subculture of people who, A, want to live here and who want to restore. And I said restore, not renovate.
Right.
Restore the homes that they live in and sort of preserving the spirit of the character of the homes that they live in and in the neighborhoods that they live in. My guest is Nathan Spearing. He is the owner of Transform NC. He's a remodeling general contractor, but quite a bit more than that. Nathan retired from the military in 2016, and as I heard your story, the decisions that you made and the life pivots that you made in 2016 remind me of what Stephen Covey said. He said, start with the end in mind.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you did.
Amen.
Right?
Yep. My pastor also has a saying, you live with the end at the front as well, the derivative of that, for sure. If you don't know where you're trying to go, you can't get there.
Take me back to 2016 and your family situation, the dilemmas that you had, the choices you had in front of you, and what spurred you to move in a direction completely different than where you had been.
At 2016, and the point that I actually got out, I was a husband, father of 5. So that reality of being a husband and a father was the reason I got out. I had done 12 combat deployments. When I started out, it was just me. 3 deployments into it, my wife came along, and then it would be really hard for me to break out how many kids at what milestones, but essentially for the next 9 deployments, slowly kids came along. So we ended up getting to the point where we had 5 children, and I remember very distinctly being deployed during Christmas one year and watching my kids open presents online and not really feeling particularly effective where I was. There's, ebbs and flows with war and political culture and things like that. And I just really had to contrast where I was, time and place, and the cost-benefit analysis of that. And I just really didn't feel like being deployed and missing those moments in my kid's life was worth it.
But you had a comfortable job. Your income was, you get spoiled. And here you have 5 kids and a family, and you walked away from it.
Yes.
And you started anew without any promise of getting to where you wanted to go. With 5 kids, that's earth-shattering.
Yeah, I guess having 5 kids makes you want to stay in a consistently paying job, but my job had me away too much. My schedule was 6 to 9 months gone, 3 to 4 months home, and even after I got out, when I was home, you were only home for a short moment, and so you kind of really were never home in a sense. You're going to another trip, and it wasn't until I was 365 days straight with no trips coming up or whatever that I really realized what it took to really be present with my family. And I think looking back, if I would have known how hard it would be, would I have still done it? I think so. I really wish, and a big part about what I'm trying to do online is and with my, different things that I talk about is help brace people for the reality, because it doesn't do any good to be ignorant, but I want to give people information that they need about how hard it's going to be, but it's going to be worth it. And so, yeah, we decided that I was going to get out. I got out almost 14 years of service. So most of the people that I interacted with that were still in the military said just 7 more years at the time I decided I was going to get out.
Which would have been 2023.
Yep. So I just recently hit my retirement mark, and that was a very interesting moment in time. I actually have a picture so my oldest son is now 15, he just turned 15, but at the time he was 7, and my youngest wasn't even a year old yet. So we took a picture in February of what would have been my 20-year mark, and I essentially had my 14-year-old son standing next to my 7-year-old son, and I had the image of basically how much of my oldest son's life I was present for right there, because I had a 7-year-old standing next to a 14-year-old, and when I look back on when I got to the point where I would have a government pension, and I could look at physically the difference between a real 7-year-old and a 14-year-old just from that one data point, being present for one kid's life.
Right.
It didn't really matter how much pain and heartache. It did help a lot that I was not in the financial peril that I was in when I got out. They were the first couple years of starting a small business, so things had gotten up, trended up in that department too. But ultimately, time is the thing. I say it's kind of God's joke on economics. It gives us all the same amount,
Right.
and so how we spend our time, everybody gets the same. It's about how you use it and invest it, and that was the main factor for getting out instead of waiting for that pension.
As you started and pivoted in 2016, you started a company called Transform NC. As you proceeded 2017, 2018, one day you had to wake up and say, wow, you know what? I'm evolving into a certain brand, a certain type of contractor, not just doing handyman jobs, doing whatever comes your way. You started to stand for something. And what was that?
Well, before I got out, my wife and I had purchased a couple different historic homes. So I had a local home inspector, Al Hawkins. People probably know All Pro Home Inspection.
Yep.
My first realtor said he's the old house guy. So we bought a 1918 on East New Hampshire, and Al was recommended to us as the home inspector for old houses. And he owns a house on May Street still, and so he essentially was just around the block from that house on East New Hampshire. And I don't think he realized that I was going to end up borrowing almost every single tool that he had, that he was going to be over there with me late at night as we made repairs. But he actually taught me. So I grew up oldest of 7 and learned how to do an addition when Father and I did an addition. So from age 13 to when I left for the military at age 19, we had kind of perpetual projects going on at our family home.
Right.
But it was new construction, essentially. It was not an old house. So Al kind of gave me the love for old houses. He showed me how to disassemble an old window,
Right.
how to restring lead weights, how to go down to Bernie's Hardware and get glass cut and reglaze window panes. And so I actually redid pretty much every single window in that house, took them out sash by sash, put foam over the windows, and they actually just re-sided the whole house, and nobody touched the windows still. And it's been, I can't remember how many years now. I think we're at 14 or 15 years since I redid those windows, and they're still holding up. And so that's where I kind of really fell in love with the historic. And so after that, we bought an 1898 on East New Hampshire and Page Street, and we remodeled that. That ended up being a duplex. So we kind of dipped our toe into the landlord sector. Another old house that we redid, and then we bought the Landsmere Cottage. We call it the Symphony House on Linden Road, right as I was getting out of the military. And my plan was, I had a little bit of a nest egg, and I was going to just take a year and just be full-time trying to restore this historic mansion. But My last day, I figured out that I owed the military my bonus back, or else I was going to get taxed immediately. So essentially, my wife and I wrote a $40,000 check my last day on active duty service. No retirement benefits, and so our working capital got cut in half there. And I basically said, well, I don't have the luxury to sit around or not really sit around, but I don't have the luxury to just focus on my real estate portfolio. I need to start a business and make money before we run out of money.
Right.
And at that point, I took every job because I needed money. I needed to pay. We had 2 mortgages, 5 kids, and so I took everything. And I learned painfully that pricing a job for a client and doing work for your wife where you just pay for materials is a completely different animal.
Right.
I worked for every type of client under the sun. The business side was really difficult. And even just when I would start to do the quotes, I would look at the total number after I did materials and labor, and I would think, that can't be how expensive this needs to be. And I would go back through it a couple times and try to get it smaller, because I understood that money that I put down on paper was coming out of somebody's account, and I just felt bad how expensive compared to doing all the work myself on the weekends and paying materials. But 4 or 5, maybe 10 jobs into it where you're working for, I don't even know what the hourly rate was at that point, because you didn't price it right.
Right.
But at the same time, having to make a decision, it's not the client's fault that I underbid this. It's my fault. I should have charged them more. They paid me on time. They paid me what I said.
Right.
And I still need to finish these jobs.
Right.
I still need to do them well, because the worst thing for a business is the final product not being good. Your product being deficient in some way. And even now, when we have difficulty with projects, I just look my clients in the eye and say, this is all going to be in the past. 1 or 2 Christmases in this kitchen, 1 or 2 more holidays having the family over. The quality of this product will outlast any momentary pain that we're going to go through. And even learning how, I actually end up having to be a marriage counselor sometimes. I have to really take time and talk with my clients about things that maybe aren't construction, because ultimately how I view it now is it's my family serving their family. And so when we get into a job with somebody, it's our families in a sense are united. We have a common goal now to transform your space into something that works for you. Right. And you're going to meet my kids. I'm going to have a kid in tow. I might have all 5 kids in tow some days. And I like that, because that's why I do what I do. And understanding a client and their family and their rhythms, and then trying to build something that enables that for them is something that's just a really fun thing to be a part of.
When you talk about pricing and underbidding, and you learned as you went, I restored the Bush Cottage on Ash Street back in 2012.
Okay.
And did my house at 120 North Valley. And I've been in the real estate business all these years, and I thought, oh, you know what? Not only am I going to be able to hit the number, I'm going to be able to stay within budget, because I'm going to put in a 20% buffer. Mm-hmm. I was dead wrong on both of them. And that 20% quickly became 50%. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you get to a point when you're restoring a home, the decisions that you make are decisions that the house tells you to make, as opposed to what the budget speaks for. If you're trying to restore, right? There was an article about your family in February of 2021 in Pine Straw, all about the Landsmere Cottage and a renovation that you did. It's an almost 9,000 square foot home, 8 bedrooms. It was built in the 30s, and we've got pictures of it. It's magnificent what you did. And it also, yes, it served your family, but it also serves as a great advertising vehicle for you for other people.
Yes. Yeah, I think that having really lived historic remodels.
Yeah.
Maybe not because my wife, I give my wife a really good rate when I work for her, as far as a labor rate. Understanding what it's like to have, demolition going on in a space that you're working in, understanding how many things that you discover, and then even just, as a realtor, that oftentimes a old house has elements of every era of building science technology, building science methods. All these things are, you'll have an old house that has 4 or 5 generations of electrical that have been cobbled together.
Yep.
So having, experienced rewiring a house that had knob and tube all the way up to the modern Romex type cable, I got a technical proficiency in basically everything that goes into these homes. And so when I speak with clients that have a historic home, I understand everything because I've encountered it on my own homes. And so I think that there is a huge need for technical proficiency in the job. That's why we have the general in front. We have to have a certain level of competency in kind of all those different disciplines. But understanding, I think that one of the unique things that I have is I just understand how disruptive a remodel really can be.
Right.
We've lived in, remodeled. The preference is, hey, move out, get a lease, let us come and go as we please, make a bunch of noise, make a big mess, not have to clean up every day. Sometimes that's just not possible for clients. We have negative pressure dust machines. We have temporary plastic walls. We have floor protectors. Like, we have probably a $5,000 or $6,000 package of dust mitigation and floor protection kind of stuff that we do, and that takes a lot of time to set up, to keep the job site clean, and it is something that maybe you don't even realize that you're not going to get when you go with the low bidder kind of guy. I do contingency budgets as well. My goal is always to leave the client in the power position, if you will. Best way I've heard general contractor described is we present options.
Yeah.
So I have the expertise to say, hey, we got option A, we got option B, and then I kind of just say, I'm going to take the contractor hat off and talk about if this was my home. That's helpful.
You said something in your on your website in your bio, which I really liked. It drives me nuts when people view remodel construction costs as a commodity. Mm-hmm. Do you really want to let the low bidder rip your life apart? Mm-hmm. And many people are told, get 2 or 3 quotes. Mm-hmm. Just don't go with one. And if people are going to just shop price on a renovation, on a restoration, you guys become like family partners, and there's a price to pay if it causes a tremendous amount of stress.
For sure. And if you hire the wrong, it is going to be stressful no matter what,
right, to
have your daily rhythms disrupted,
right,
no matter who does it.
Right.
But there are ways to make it significantly more painful.
Right.
And I like to rephrase the get 3 quotes as interview 3 contractors.
Right.
Because you definitely are going to, it's hard to know what you're getting if you haven't experienced the bad or the good. Most people on their first remodel or their second remodel or whatever don't really know how bad it really could be.
Right.
And so some of the ways that you can do that is just interview 3 and see what is their process like. What's their website? What is their communication? What kind of feel? I think that I'm a military guy, so I have some tactical questioning, interrogation kind of background, and we talk about how much of communication is nonverbal. So the content of your words, I think, is single digit percentage as far as what percentage of communication. The rest is tone, body language,
tenor, yep,
and all those different things. So get in the same room with a contractor,
yep,
and that's why I say interview. And do you feel comfortable with them? Because and I, one of the things I say too is I don't have a set of subcontractors that I use on my projects and at my house that are good subcontractors, and then a different set that's cheap that I send to yours. There are local guys that do that. The local builders, local contractors, they'll price their jobs professionally, somewhat as a commodity. They got the lower bid subs, and they mark those up, and we depend on labor as a contractor. And so you can like the contractor a lot, but then you have to realize there's probably about 50 people, maybe
behind
more,
you.
that are going to come in and out of your house during the course of that renovation.
Let's come back in the second set. I want to talk about your contractor team. I want to talk about some individuals in particular that I know you work with and who helped me meet you. Our guest for the whole hour is Nathan Spearing. He is the owner of Transform NC, making old things new. This is All Things Moore County. We'll be right back. Welcome back to All Things Moore County. Nathan Spearing is our guest. He is the owner of Transform NC, remodeling contractor. He specializes in historic and whole home remodels, kitchen and bathroom remodels, structural repairs, additions and outdoor living spaces. He's got quite a background and a wide breadth of what he can do. We were closing out the first set, and you were talking about the contract team. How many people do you have on your contractor team that you bring in? Because anyone can quote a price. If you don't have the right contractors and they're not available to you, delays.
Yeah, the reality is we need more people in the trades, and we can go back to that at some point, but I have two guys that are essentially full-time with me, and then I got Bronzy as well.
Bronzy Lawson, who I've worked with, right?
Yep, and so he and I have worked together on a lot of projects, and he is kind of my go-to when I need a lot of muscle. Some jobs are just really hard for two guys to get done in a fast time. We have a renovation going on Linden Road right now that I'm relying almost exclusively on Bronzy for the framing and the structural stuff. He's been in the business a really long time. So having kind of that deep bench essentially of 6 to 7 guys, we can go both of our crews at the same time. And I can go out there and put the belts on too, so we can get 7, 8 people on a job site and really knock something out if we need to. Or we can have the two guys that just kind of chip away at the kitchen remodels and bath remodels. And, I like it because, they'll come out and work on our houses, and they'll work around my kids and my older guy, Gary Morrison, my kids kind of think he's their grandfather sometimes. I have to be like, hey, this isn't grandpa. Dad's paying this guy to do some work here. You kids, stop going out and talking to him. But the reality is all those different subcontractors and key people are in and out of my houses and in our life and part of our team. And I usually, I've had clients say, hey, that seems pretty expensive. I need you to go get another bid.
Right.
Had that happen very recently. And I said, I totally understand that you want that price to be less, but I only use the best trades in town.
Right.
And when you say you want me to go out and get another bid, what you're actually saying is you want it to be more expensive, because now I have to go out and find somebody that's untested, get their number, and budget for problems. What happens if he doesn't do a perfect one of our taglines is near perfect remodels, because perfection is kind of hard to attain, but I that's kind of the standard trying to hold myself to. And so anyway, the price is the price. You're going to spend it somewhere. You're going to spend it budgeting for mistakes and having to redo stuff, or you're going to spend it on loss of peace of mind, the product not lasting.
Right.
My goal is our product to last longer, way longer than the style does. Like, you're going to want to remodel it because it's out of style now. Although we try to focus on the classic historic styles, the things that are still
Right.
The blacks and the whites and the trim and the things that are in historic houses that are they're not really trendy. They
Right.
stick around, they stay around.
Right.
And so essentially it's going to last. And you may not notice the difference between our product and someone else's product year one or year two. We do have a transient community here with the military.
Yep.
If I go to a client's house and they say, hey, we're going to be here 1-2 years and then we're going to try to flip it, I tell them immediately, hey, look, my goal is to give you 60-70% of my cost added to the value of the home. And then when you divide that 25-30% over 6, 7, 8 years of living in this space and it performing well for you,
Right.
it's an easy. Although with real estate prices these days, sometimes it's 100% back, because it's
It's crazy.
it's insane. But yeah, we rely on the best. I want it's a combination of how well they communicate, how dependable they are, the reliability and the ability to. There's so many ways to do shoddy work.
Right.
There's so many ways to cut corners.
Right.
And those ways that you cut corners and that shoddy work sometimes won't rear its head until a bad storm. It won't rear its head until 4 or 5 years of your kids getting out of the bathtub and rotting out the subfloor. And, you just don't notice it. The plywood holds up at first, but the fact that the contractor didn't waterproof by the shower, outside the shower, so that little bit of water that goes down every time you step out, those kind of things, you don't necessarily even know to check. So you really want a contractor that you can trust,
Right.
and that is technically proficient, but then also his entire bench, everybody he relies on, is the best as well.
I met Bronzy in 2012. He was working with Pinehurst Homes on the remodel of 120. It was really a complete restoration, and he was working in the capacity of a trim carpenter. I liked his manner, his way, his honesty. Worked with him since on my home, my primary residence, and just recently a home in Knollwood. In referring him to people, I've had many clients come back to me and say, because my referrals are me. If I don't make the right referral, some people have said, oh, just too much. They want to spend less. Well, they're going to wind up getting somebody that, like you said, may do shoddy work. But isn't one of your challenges the fact that you can lose out to another contractor who may come in, bid lower, but then find out as you go through the project, the price goes up? You can't lock it in stone, can you?
No, we do. We talked about contingency budgets. My goal is, so I do a lot of design work as well.
Yep.
And so I do 3D drawings. I charge for that service, actually. So I say, hey, I charge for estimates. I still go out there and we'll do initial consultation with clients once we've kind of determined that their project is within our area of expertise. But then I say, look, a free estimate's only worth what you paid for it. And so by paying me to come out here, paying me to draw this job, paying me to sit with you and help figure out how the space needs to be laid out to support your life, I'm able to really get to know you. I'm able to get to know your preferences as far as what you like. Because there's also a lot of times I have to make a decision for a client.
Right.
I need to understand a lot of the non-tangible things or the reasons why we're doing things so that I can make the call one way or the other on the job site when things are happening if I can't get a hold of them. And so I'm able to spend the time getting to know them, getting to know their project, getting in the attic, getting in the crawl space, getting really good measurements, and take a lot of the guesswork out of the whole process. I think that free estimates, typically they try to throw a square foot number down. They don't really understand the whole scope of the project, and they write in, that it'll change with anything, which ultimately is the reality. We don't know with an existing home until we start to peel back the layers.
Right.
But we can plan for as much as we can see. And by me taking dozens of hours being there, we know.
I want to come back in the third set, and I want to talk to you, and don't let me forget this because it's important. Clients are always amazed at the added cost of a rehab, renovation, restoration versus new construction, why it's more expensive. Nathan Spearing is our guest. Transform NC is the name of the company. This is All Things Moore County. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our final set of All Things Moore County. Nathan Spearing from Transform NC is our guest. We close the second set with a question I wanted to ask you. People are taken back by the cost of renovation or restoration versus new construction. A lot of people think, if it's just a rehab, it shouldn't be like new construction is more expensive, but that's not the case, is it?
Mm-mm. Yeah, I see a lot of people it will make economic sense to knock the house over,
right,
haul away all the debris,
right, to start
and then
again.
build again versus renovate.
Right.
And that honestly is how I've gotten a lot of my historic houses, because they kind of fell in that band between too expensive to buy and tear down, but it's technically difficult to remodel, and so people were scared away. So they sat on the market because the amount of work was required, the model didn't quite work, and then also just people don't really want to see an old house destroyed. There's a lot of craftsmanship. There's a lot of things that an old house that represents. It's easy to be nostalgic and think all old houses were built this way. I think we can say, but really what's left is the ones that were built well.
Yes.
And the old ones, the economy ones have fallen apart. There's always been cheap housing, and there's always been lower level stuff. But I like to see them saved. I like that a lot of the variables are set. My wife and I are designing. We're actually about to get permits on our house. We finished designing it. We're going to start building our house this year. But it was one of the more difficult ones that I did because we've always renovated. We've always restored, and we've always had kind of the shell to work with. And even a lot of times craftsmanship that we're just setting free again, we're stripping off the paint. We're giving it a new color. We're dealing with water damage. But to start from zero is difficult, but that's essentially why it's so much more expensive. Is we have to deconstruct the house. We have to do it a lot of times in a way where we don't mess up essential aspects of the home, the load-bearing members that hold the roof up, that keep the house together. So we have to essentially do surgery and delicately, especially if you live there, so it's not all the dust isn't just going into the air. I say, the dust doesn't belong in your toothbrush. It gives that word picture of, but the deal. If you don't put up plastic, you don't use negative pressure dust machines, that dust goes everywhere. That historic plaster gets everywhere. So that delicate, that surgery, that deconstruction that we have to do with the mind of being able to then put it back and to not disrupt your life is essentially double, sometimes more, the work than just to start with a slab or start with a crawl space and build from scratch.
Do you work on some of the restoration projects that you do? Do you work in tandem with an architect?
I have done before. In some ways, it's great when a client comes to me with a set of plans. Excuse me. But
Sure.
I like to be involved at the very beginning.
Right.
I like to get retained, and just like an architect would get retained, and I like to work as part of the design team because architects have various strengths that accent my strengths, but sometimes they have weaknesses too. They're getting paid a retainer. Their fees are what their fees are. They do a really good job of taking your vision and making it a reality. But I oftentimes see a lot of designs actually be done in such a way that the budget gets blown because of the drawing. And then the clients end up in a position where it's hard to modify because you're going to have to go back and spend more money with the architect to do a revision. It's a product the architects have built, so it's totally understandable that they want to maintain control of it. But a lot of the times I take my iPhone in, it has a LiDAR scanner on it, so I can do a 3D scan of the house in a few minutes. I can send it off. I can pay to have it turned into a 3D scaled model of the space, and then I can do the drawings and modify. Now, is it going to look photorealistic with all the lighting and the shadows? No, but it will be to scale,
Right.
and it will give you a picture of where we're trying to go.
Right.
I think that's very helpful for the client to see it. It's not as good as seeing it in reality, but it allows them to see it's helpful to show them, okay, this is actually how big a bathtub is. You can't fit a bathtub, a 6-foot shower, a toilet, a 7-foot vanity in here. So this is actually the cube space that's required. And then it also gives us a way to show subcontractors. I do all that work before bringing any subs out so that we have a picture. We have a end state in mind, like we talked about at the beginning of the podcast. And then everybody sees that picture and is planning and pricing that.
Right.
So that's the kind of detail we do, and we call it feasibility and design. And the feasibility side of it is understanding. I have a really good background in the structural side. I have an engineer that I rely on. I can come in and tell you with a pretty good degree of certainty, yes, we can move that wall. This is about what's going to be entailed in doing that. And then I bring the engineer in to specify it for me, and then we build our plan around, firmly rooted in reality. It's not just a drawing. I'm intending to build it. And so, in a sense, I like to think that gives me a little bit of an edge on the architect.
Right.
But at the same time, I've had clients bring me some beautiful plans that I could have never come up with on my own, and that I think is the strength. But I think it's a benefit to have the architect and the person you expect to build it at the beginning and present in a lot of the meetings and able to kind of give insight from their particular stance, and then also to be able to influence, well, what about we move that wall over a foot instead of trying to make it that big, and we can leave this existing wall in place, and then I can do this, and then, okay. And so some of those reality kind of things of your project can stay in focus while you're going through the first set of plans.
Okay. You also have your own podcast, and you cover a ton of different topics. It's your way of informing and personalizing yourself before you're ever eyeball to eyeball with the client.
Yes. Yeah, so I just recently started that. There's not a whole lot of episodes out there, but I essentially end up having to have a lot of the conversations that we're having now about price, about get 3 quotes, about design, and about how long it takes and what to expect. And so essentially what the podcast does is allow the conversation to kind of be out there, to allow the client to go and listen, the potential client to go and listen. And it's also something, I can't be everyone's contractor. So when I give the preliminary estimates and I send them to design agreements and they say, oh, that's just too much, I can say, okay, that's fine. We're not everybody's contractor. Please listen to this episode. Please look at this guide.
Right.
Please check these things about everyone that you're going to, because my goal, and I tell my whole team and the design team and my assistant and people are involved, I want everyone's interaction with us and our brand to improve their knowledge about construction, about the trades. So if you're not going to hire me and you're going to go hire a cheaper guy, check his insurance, check his licensing, check some of his other work. What does his online presence look like? Look at reviews if they're available. Find referrals from people that he's done before, and really make sure that you're not just making this decision on price, that he's qualified and he's able to do that. So I haven't had anybody at this point say, we listened to Transform Your Home, and
that's why we're going with
but
you.
the goal is that I have a client that says, okay, I listened to your podcast. I understand that there's a fee to do design and feasibility. I think this is my budget, because people just really don't want to say their budget. They think that if they say it to me, that it's just going to get wired to my account immediately, and that I'm going to say, I very rarely have a client say their budget is more than what it would be, and then I say, oh, shoot, I could charge her more. That's not how it works. Most of the time, it's qualifying. Do you think that those prices you see on HGTV are really what it costs? And really just get the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
This is about, and that's actually why I put the prices. I put a price guide on my website. I finally just did it and said, here's kind of what is entailed. This is where we start. And then if somebody comes in with a really low budget, say, hey, here it is. It's on the website. And this is just to set the stage of where and I don't really care what anyone else is charging. They're not doing what I'm doing. Mine is a unique product, and that's what every contractor's product is unique to them. There is so many factors that go into it. It's impossible to compare. So find out what that product is and how it's built and what it's made of, and buy the product. But it's not like a car. You don't get to take it for a test drive. You have to understand the vision and the goal at the beginning, and then hope it comes together how you hope it's pictured. And the most qualified guy is going to do that for you.
With all the subliminal marketing that you do, the podcast, which is very effective, the bottom line is, my guess is that you reach clients through referrals from past clients.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's we get a lot of clients, and even having repeat clients. Yep. I think that's a huge benefit to having somebody come back. They did the whole remodel, and now we're ready to do our kitchen, and they hire me again, and we're satisfied with the product. I think that people are searching and finding, but the goal is, and I tell clients, like, I plan on being here forever, generationally. My son's hopefully operating the business.
Yeah.
We're going to see each other in Harris Teeter, and I want it to be ultimately a good experience, and it to not bring up painful memories when we see each other in the grocery store.
You really are. You really do remind me of Stephen Covey, beginning with the end in mind, because you've gotten to that point in the last 7 years, and I'm very glad to hear that you and Bronzy are going to hook up on some projects, because I think the world of him, and he thinks the world of you, and he was nice enough to get this set up. But people can they can start by just going to your website. It's transformnc.com.
Correct.
Pretty intuitive.
Yep.
You'd be surprised how many guests have websites that have nothing to do with what they're I don't understand.
The name
people.
is important.
The name is really important. You have an Instagram account, but just starting with the website would be a great way to start.
Yep. The Instagram accounts are at the top,
Right.
I believe, and you can just click, or even at the bottom, you can follow us on Instagram. If you go to my business Instagram, you can even dig a little deeper and follow the personal accounts as well, and that is our business and our personal are very well blended together, and who I am and how I can serve you is very much about who I am as a person, and I'm excited to hear from some of your guests and transform their home.
You will. I like your directness. You're very straightforward. You're instantly credible, and you said something very prophetic. Meet with the contractors, get a feel, eyeball to eyeball. It's not necessarily the words, it's the nonverbals, and sometimes people have to make gut decisions, go with their intuition, which I think you probably do too.
Yes.
I'm guessing.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure to have you on, and I know we'll be seeing you down the road.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Nathan Spearing of Transform NC. Everyone have a great week. This is All Things Moore County.